Hi, I'm Aziz, and I will be walking you through a brief overview and history of sustainability. When we talk about the concept of sustainability, one framework that kind of summarizes everything cumulatively is the triple bottom line framework, which is essentially the criteria that we have in place that would pretty much conceive a sustainable business. And the triple bottom line doesn't only represent how we can be sustainable, but it also makes good business sense. Before we delve into what it is, everyone knows what a bottom line is. We use it in regular parlance. We have this expression called the bottom line, get to the bottom line of the story. And that essentially means the objective, the point. So when we say the bottom line, it simply means that for a business to operate sustainably, we need more than one thing. That's what the triple bottom line is. We need three main components. So those are our social impact, our environmental impact, and our financial impact. So it's not that profit is to be neglected in sustainable marketing. It's just not the most important thing. So again, the triple bottom line says that if we can take care of our people, being our customers and employees, while taking care of the planet, and we are making profit, then we are succeeding in all levels and marketing as best as we possibly could. So when we go back to the history of sustainability in terms of the business landscape, we realize the idea began to foster early in the 1900s. One of the key ideas that began to emerge were focused on preservation, conservation, and restoration, almost exclusively focused on the environment. So there was no direct link to businesses at that point in time. It was merely just a focus on the environment. The idea of preservation was focused on protecting the environment regardless of the economic value. Conservation, on the other hand, was essentially conserving the land and upholding its integrity to serve the generations that come after us. And restoration was focused on basically picking up the pieces and restoring ruined spaces so it can be utilized over and over again. So through this newfound awareness, we saw organizations such as the National Park Services emerge, which was concentrated on the idea of preserving land in the United States. But then again, there was no direct link between businesses and sustainability. Now, in the mid-1900s, we begin to see a lot of catastrophes that were driven by businesses, and that kind of shed light on the fact that businesses were also culprits in compromising the environment. So in 1952, we have London's killer fog. Similarly, in 1969, the California oil spill disaster, and again in 1969 with the fire transpiring in the Cuyahoga River. Now, these disasters in general drove a more aggressive action from people. People started viewing the environment as something that doesn't only have to be preserved, but had these negative impacts on humankind and on human space as well. So now the conversation kind of begins to shift from we should preserve the environment simply to uphold the value of nature into maybe we should uphold the integrity of our environment, because as we saw with the disasters, the environment can turn into our biggest enemy and claim lives if we begin to neglect it. And one of the key elements that began this conversational shift was a seminal book that focused on business's impact on the environment, and that was Rachel Carson's Silent Spring, that was published in 1963, that brought through public awareness that nature was in fact vulnerable to human intervention. The premise of the book was basically to uncover the effects of pesticides towards humans. And what was really interesting about the book is that it stirred up a lot of conversation within the scientific realm as well as between simple civilians. So now we begin to see a kind of contentious lens between sustainability and businesses. So as people started seeing these environmental catastrophes transpire, in conjunction with the growing public awareness, we start to see a lot of activism and regulatory responses that emerge in the mid to late 1900s. So at this point, we had this lens of businesses wanting one thing, regulation wanting another thing, and activism kind of wanting to push for a greater regulation. So with this increased external pressure businesses were battling, we see businesses slowly begin to lean towards sustainability simply to abide to the regulations prescribed. So in 1970, we had the first Earth Day, which at that point in time was kind of a protest rather than a commemoration. And with this building pressure on businesses, like I said, we began to see a lot of regulations being passed. So we have the Clean Air Act that was imposed in 1970, the Water Pollution Control Act and the Clean Water Act, both being imposed in 1972. We also start to see a lot of different organizations emerge, such as the Greenpeace organization, which was actually founded in Vancouver. And we also start seeing intervention from an international scope based on the Brundtland Report, which was published by the United Nations. And the whole premise of the Brundtland Report was to help kind of direct nations towards following a sustainable development goal. And the Brundtland Report was actually the first time sustainability, or the language of sustainable development, was being used. And that's when the term was actually coined. So that's what's really interesting about the Brundtland Report.